Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 2.2. Still we are under lesson 2 of our topic, which is the globalization communication. So let us further know more about what is globalization. So the process of globalization is an unavoidable feature of modernity and development. It promotes the development and prevalence of digital technologies that make communication faster and information more easily accessible. And thus, globalization was prophesied by Heidegger in 1950, commenting that new communication and information technologies would spawn novel possibilities for dramatically extending the scope of virtual reality. This means that distant sites of the most ancient cultures are shown on film as if they stood this very moment amidst today's street traffic. The peak of this abolition of every possibility of remoteness is reached by television, which will soon pervade and dominate the whole machinery of communication. Heidegger's prophecy is held true and extends beyond boundaries of virtual reality. Let us move further to many definitions of globalization. So, consider the following definitions of globalization from this Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy edited by Sherman of 2014. Number 1 definition. Globalization is associated with deterritorialization, according to which a growing variety of social activities takes place, irrespective of the geographical location of participants. As Skoll in the year 1996 observes, global events can, via telecommunication, digital computers, audiovisual media, rocketry, and the like, occur almost simultaneously anywhere and everywhere in the world. Number 2 definition. Globalization is linked to the growth of social interconnectedness across existing geographical and political boundaries. What does it mean? It refers to processes of change which underpin a transformation in the organization of human affairs by linking together and expanding human activity across regions and continents. An example of a deterritorialized social space is the use of what we are every day scanning right now, which is the Facebook, where people connect despite of geographical location. So I know for a fact, hindi lang puro Pinoy ang inyong mga kaibigan on your Facebook. There are other people or there are even people with other cultures whom you are friends with Facebook and whom you are communicating with on Facebook. So, that simply identifying globalization as a social interconnectedness among people across the world. Number 3 definition. Globalization must also include a reference to the speed or velocity of social activity. High-speed technology only represents the tip of the iceberg, as they say. The linking and expanding of social activities across borders is predicted on the possibility of relatively fast flows and movements of people, information, capital, and goods. That is very correct. If you do have relatives or if your parents are abroad, it's just a one click away. If you would want to call them immediately, so as long as you do have connection or so as long that you do have loads, you can immediately see them using multimedia or using the media. Number 4, definition of globalization. Globalization should be conceived as a relatively long-term process. Some contemporary theories believe that globalization has taken a particular intense form in recent decades, as innovations in communication, transportation, information technologies have generated stunning new possibilities for simultaneity and instantaneousness. This simply means that it is not just a long-term process, but there is a simultaneous change that has been happening in the world right now, or in our society right now. Before, there was no such Facebook, there was no such Twitter or Instagram or whatever that we have right now. But since we are into an innovation, or we are into an advanced technology, as we say, or in your current year as a millennial, as they say, is we are more into an easy way of communicating to other people, or even the advanced technologies right now being brought by globalization is actually giving us an easy life. Yes, it is. Before, we hand wash our clothes, but right now, you can just leave it on a certain washing machine. Same through with communication. Before, we are writing through paper, handwritten to our loved ones abroad, but right now, they are just a text away from us, or a message away from us through Messenger. So that's how communication and globalization is being linked together right now. Fifth definition of globalization. Globalization should be understood as a multi-pronged process. The emergence of what we call around the world, around the clock financial markets, where major cross-border financial transactions are made in the cyberspace at the blink of an eye, represents a familiar example of the economic phase of globalization. This simply means that businesses right now can apparently do business online, or do business, or may be able to present their business to other countries by the use of, or by communicating through the use of technology, which is apparently connected to what is, or what we call, a globalized society where we are right now. Let's move on to the features of globalization according to Thomson of 1995. So Thomson acknowledged that the origins of globalization of communication can be traced back to the mid-19th century. He noted that this process is primarily phenomenon in the 20th century. So he presented these following features of globalization. Number 1, the emergence of transnational communication conglomerates as key players in the global system. Yes, transnational communication conglomerates. This includes now the big businesses around the world who has this so-called multinational companies or corporations, okay, doing business from one country to another. Okay? Or let's just say we have right now the globe, the smart, okay, or we have the Google, we have the Facebook. These are some transnational communication conglomerates whom considered to be key players in the global system. They are doing business through communication, and they are one of those conglomerates. Next, the social impact of new technologies, especially those associated with satellite communication. Of course, okay? You cannot do social, you cannot immerse yourself in the social media if there is no such technologies that we are using right now. Okay? The asymmetric flow of information and communication products within the global system. It is a continuous, okay? Every day we communicate, every day we use technology, therefore we are contributing to what we call globalization. The variations and inequalities in terms of access to the global networks of communication. All these four features of globalization is connected to how we communicate from one another, to how we interconnect ourselves to one another, from one place to another, or from one country to another around the world. What are the major trends now in globalization? So, according to Chen, he accounted two major trends of globalization and human society. The first is Technology development has made globalization inevitable and irreversible. This means that the human society has fundamentally transformed. A rapid development of communication technologies and linked every part of the world into an interconnected network. So the most recent advancement of technology is the development of electronic mail systems such as we have our email. We have also computer conferencing, web pages, the use of mobile phones, and the innovation of transportation technologies. Among these communication technologies, the internet is the most significant contribution to the global interconnectivity. It has blurred the line between mass and interpersonal communication and enables both personal and public messages to flow across national boundaries faster and more easily. Okay? Next, another trend in globalization right now is economic transformation has led to a new landscape of economic world. This is very true because the economic shifts to globalization inevitably change the contours of the world of work and bring in new consumers, new corporations, new knowledge, and new jobs. Just like, for example, right now, people right now in the Philippines or Filipinos right now are very immersed in Korean novelas, are very immersed into Korean food, are well adapting some trends in Korean culture, which is apparently one of the effect of it is the demand of economic inflow in our country. Okay? So from the perspective of management and communication, describes the process of transformation of business organizations as the movement from domestic firms to global firms. A global company demands the ability of transnational dynamics to understand the potential clients' needs all over the world. This means that it quickly transforms these worldwide needs into products and services and delivers them to the clients in a culturally appropriate and acceptable fashion. Just like our exportation of bananas in other parts of the country. In the Philippines, bananas are most likely very cheap. But if it is transported or exported outside the country or outside the Philippines, the price of our product in other countries is very costly, or it is being bought in a high price. Okay? So that means that the economic development in our country in terms of exportation is high because there are products in our country that they do not have but we have. So apparently that contributes now that contributes in terms of globalization, and at the same time that contributes to communicating with them because a certain business will never be successful if the communication is being misunderstood or the communication is not understood at all. Okay? So various businesses, industries, or entities began to make this systematic effort towards globalization. There are new strategies, ideas, and processes that will increasingly be transformed into a multiple cultural norm. The global market represents a great challenge on aspects of technology management, culture, and language. It will also certainly challenge every organizational structure to adjust in the new environment and will demand a new way of communication to reach competence in the process of intercultural interaction. What are now the impact of globalization? Globalization requires the development of a person's language ability because the ability to use language accurately and appropriately is a requirement to a globalizing society. In a social interaction, a person demonstrates the ability to respond appropriately to the formality level of the situation. She can use also a variety of sentence structures and can handle expanded inventory of concrete, idiomatic, and conceptual language. Hence, the creativity to use the English language is a determinant of a person's communication skill. I repeat, the creativity to use the English language is a determinant of a person's communication skill. And therefore, according to Ingram in the year 2009, communication skills development has always been an important factor of success in business. But the influence of globalization and cross-cultural interaction in recent decades has impacted the types of communication skills needed in dramatic ways. No longer can entrepreneurs afford to simply communicate well within their own homogeneous cultures. But today, people need to understand the dynamics of long-distance collaboration, the impact of culture on manners of speaking and body language, and how to use technology to communicate with people on the other side of the globe. Understanding the impact of globalization on various of these factors can help students to select their most useful communication skills development program. Therefore, here are some globalization impact on communication skills development. We have number 1, virtual interaction. What is this virtual interaction? So globalization has introduced virtual communication and collaboration as a major part of workplace dynamics, meaning that modern entrepreneurs need to understand the strengths and limitations of different communication media and how to use each medium to maximum effect. This is applicable to you as an IT student. You should know by now how to properly use social media, or what we can call in purposive communication as a communication media. You should know how to use this medium to communicate to other people. Because as your course dictates you are an IT person. So you should be the first one to know the ethics in using the media. Okay? For example, example ng virtual interaction. Communicating via email to distant team members requires a certain etiquette and nuance, not necessarily required in face-to-face interactions. Holding virtual meetings requires a similar change in approach, and people who are unaccustomed to communicating in groups in virtual settings can find themselves lost, confused, or unable to share their input. Okay? Next, cultural awareness in speech. The need for cultural awareness is a major impact of globalization on the required skill set of effective communicators. This means that modern entrepreneurs and employees need the ability to catch subtle nuances of people's manner of speech when communicating across cultures. This is now connected to being courteous and respectful to other culture. Okay? Even when two people are speaking the same language, cultural differences can affect vocabulary. Correct. Colloquial expressions, voice tone, and taboo topics. In our Filipino culture, for example, it can be considered rude to ask unprofessional questions. Even if they seem harmless, these questions could show that employees are incompetent, rude, or even liabilities to the company, and it might end up costing their job. Some of these questions to avoid if you are in the workplace, are this. So these questions should be applied later if you are already working, no, as an IT personnel, as an IT manager, as an IT professional. So you shouldn't ask these questions because these questions are considered to be unprofessional. It is unethical to ask these questions to your boss, to your co-workers later on. Like for example, are you sure about that? Do I get some bonus pay? I don't have much to do today. Can I go home early? When should I get raise of my pay? Am I going to do that? It's not a part of my job. So it's very unprofessional. It seems that you are doubting. It seems that you are demanding. It seems that you are that person who has high standards. Hindi marunong tumapak sa lupa. Or it's not humble at all. You are a person who do not have humility at all. Other questions are, how much are you offering them? Or do I get my birthday off? How do I benefit from this? What's the employee discount like? Or who should I avoid around here? So those questions are very unprofessional. So besides unprofessional questions, some people ask silly questions that should be avoided in the workplace. Common sense should be upheld. Correct. All people has common sense. When you communicate to other people, use your common sense. It requires one to have a sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters or basic ability to perceive, understand, and judge what is shared by almost all people. Okay? So before, this simply stating that before you ask something, think first. Think before you ask or think before you talk. That is the proper way on how to communicate properly to other persons simply because we are individually and culturally different from one another. The belief of other people might be different from you. Okay? So the way the other person communicate is way different from you. So there are differences. So you should know how to properly talk to them. Okay? Next, cultural awareness in body language. Awareness of cultural differences in body language can be just as important as the nuances of speech. Students should understand acceptable speaking distances, conflict styles, eye contact, and posture in different cultures, accepting that the physical expressions of their own culture are not universally accepted. These differences should be addressed to avoid difficulties or miscommunications. So these are some examples of body languages. Shaking hands. Okay sign. Thumbs up. Okay? So if a person asks you properly, okay? So if he gave you a thumbs up, that means okay. Broad arm movement, pointing using the lips, eye contact. Of course, if you are sincere in talking to that person, you should do eye contact. Head nod from side to side or head shake. Okay? Head nod up and down. Pag head nod from side to side or head shake, that is no. Head nod up and down, that is yes. Tagging the earlobes or sitting with crossed legs. So these are few examples of body languages. It means something. Time differences. The advent of global collaboration introduces another new dynamic to communication skills, which is the need to communicate and share information with people across several time zones. When people collaborate with others on the other side of the globe, their counterparts are usually at home asleep while they themselves are at work. That is true. If you are living in the Philippines and you are going to communicate a person in Canada, we are actually 9 hours, I think, 9 hours or 8 hours, no? Behind from them. Okay? So, most likely, we are night here, it's a day there. So, we should know, no? We should know how to communicate to them properly. If you do have online job and your boss is an American citizen or a person who is living in the US, you should work in their time. Why? Because you are the inferior. They are your superiors. Okay? So, basically, that will be your routine in your job if your boss is in the US. Today's communication skills development program should address the nuances of overcoming this challenge by teaching people to understand the information needs of their colleagues. According to the communication styles of different countries or cultures, being able to share effectively information between shifts can make or break the productivity of a geographically dispersed team, making this an important issue for many companies. Now, let's move on to what is the role of media in the globalization process. Communication media play a significant role in constructing and representing the phenomenon of globalization and subsequently in changing educational and learning processes. A number of sociologists and mediologists underscored their significance in the globalization process. According to Cornali and Rochi in 2012, presented the role of media in the globalization process. And these are the following. First, it enables communication to take place in real time over great distances. These new forms of communication, especially the electronic media, had shrunk the globe into a much smaller physical space where information passes instantaneously from one part of the world to another. Number two, it advances the 21st century into what we speak as the globalization of communication. So, we can refer this to the features of communication or the features of communication in the globalization aspect, which are the emergence of transnational communication conglomerates as key players in the global system, the social impact of new technologies, especially those associated with satellite communication, the asymmetric flow of information and communication products within the globe system, and of course, the variations of inequalities in terms of access to the global networks of communication. So that is the advancement of the 21st century in terms of the role of media in the globalization process. The emergence of the electronic media and the digital media has brought about a radical change on how we see education, forcing people to relocate in it, the new economic and social scene, and to redefine educational roles, content, and styles. And we are actually doing it right now. Education online or home-based education, no? In other terminology. So we are using the media right now, these advanced technologies right now, to learn and to apparently attend to our classes. Okay? So, let's move on to language and globalization. Language continues to evolve. It keeps on developing as people are becoming more literate in the global world. Most especially to you, new generations. To you, what we call millennials. There are a lot of terminologies right now which apparently you do not know are connected to the globalizing society or is contributed to what we call globalization. Okay? So there are several words and terminologies that have been introduced in the 21st century. Hence, the 21st century language has become the language that exists in the global world. Some example of these are shown in the chart that you are seeing right now. So these are called terminologies in the globalizing society. First is chat room. Of course, in Facebook or in Messenger, there is a so-called chat room. What is chat room in the 21st century or in the globalized society? This is an internet feature that allows people to communicate in real time with strangers. So let me just reiterate what you are seeing, or what these terminologies that you are seeing right now are the 21st century languages that we are using, which apparently connected to globalization or terminologies that we are using in our globalized society right now. Okay? Next is the computer literacy. I know for a fact that you are always hearing this term. It is an emerging form of literacy in the globalizing society. It is also termed as internet literacy. Next also is a cyberspace. It is a general term for World Wide Web. Yeah, so World Wide Web, the internet, electronic mailing lists, discussion groups and forums, chat rooms, and etc. Digital citizenship. The 21st century concept of citizenship oriented towards the creation of conscious, critical forms of integration in the globalizing society. We have also the digital competence, where it involves the confidence and critical use of information society technology for work, leisure, and communication. It is underpinned by basic skills in ICT. Correct. So if you graduated in the senior high school in ICT, you should be able to do the following basic skills in ICT: to retrieve, assess, store, produce, present, and exchange information, and to communicate and participate in collaborative networks through the internet. So most probably all the basic things has already been acquired during your senior high school years. Specifically if you are an ICT student before. Digital immigrants, the adults who learn to adapt to their environment at the same time they always retain to some degree their language. So then we have also the digital natives. These are the young people who are regarded as the native speaker of the digital language of computers. It is also termed as net generation or new millennial learners. So you are considered to be digital natives. Digital skills, it refers to the ability to evaluate a variety of technological solutions more than just knowing how to use a specific technology well. That's why you are into IT, because you would want to acquire digital skills. Emoji, of course, all of you are using this. I myself is using this. So, emoji is a terminology in our globalized society. It pertains to the creation of new alphabet or the alphabet, letters plus numbers, diacritical marks plus emoji or picture words. Emoticon, yes, we are also using this. These are words without letters conveying emotional responses such as smileys. If you love someone right now, you do not have to say I love you, just send him a heart. That means you love them. Ethnoscape, it describes the global culture which extends the landscape of persons who form the shifting world where we live, that is tourists, immigrants, refugees, and etc. Hyperpersonal communication. It refers to computer-mediated communication that is more socially desirable than face-to-face communication, of course. Diba? Sometimes, we just, if we want to talk to our loved ones immediately, okay? So even though without face-to-face communication, we do have the messenger, we do have the Facebook, we talk to them online. Ideoscape, it is the movement of ideologies. It is usually composed of ideas, terms, and images, including freedom, welfare, rights, sovereignty, representation, and democracy. There are a lot in the Google. Mediascape, it pertains to electronic and print media and global culture flows. Metamorphosis, the transformation of communication media. OMG. Okay, one of the first texting expressions, oh my god. Another is BFF, as in best friend forever. These are some first sign that the internet would change language. Selfie. Yan. Most of you are very fond of doing selfie. It is an egomaniacal madness that gripped the world where a greater focus is given on the individual. But be careful. Be careful on always uploading your selfies, uploading your pictures online, or uploading current activities in your everyday life, because right now in our advanced technology, though it gives us the freedom to do whatever we want on the media, but at the same time there is a negative or there is a bad effect of too much uploading photos and other activities online. So be careful. Streaming multimedia, it refers to a live audio and video available through a website, of course. Technoscape, it refers to the movement of technology. Telematic network, broadly to the convergence of telecommunications information processing, including internet, mobile communication services, cloud computing, intelligent transport systems, and etc. Virtual community, it's a community that exists in the world of electronic communication rather than in the physical world. So, if you are into communicating online, you are part of the virtual community. And virtual reality is the use of computer to stimulate that experience in a way that is obscure from reality. Okay, so we are all using virtual reality. So thank you. And I know it's too late, but I would want to greet you Happy Hearts Month. Okay, so Happy Valentine's Month to everyone. This ends of lesson 2.2. Activity is being attached on the next slide. Please read your module. Thank you and good luck to your prelim exam.